Welcome everyone to my chess channel, where I share exciting and high-quality chess videos. Today, I would like to share with you a thrilling game, a mind-blowing battle between two world-famous masters. Fabiano Caruana, playing white, moving first, and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, playing black, defending with the queen's side. Please enjoy the game. Maxime opens the battle by pushing his c-pawn, tearing open the battlefield as if he's saying, "Let's fight for the center." No anime. Caruana responds like a true warrior. His knight leaps out from gate to f6, planting itself like a guard ready to duel. Maxime summons his queen's knight, hopping it to c3. Two white horses now stand proudly, ready to charge. Caruana pushes his d-pawn forward, claiming the center boldly as if to say, "You shall not pass without a fight." Maxime doesn't hesitate. His pawn from c4 smashes into the pawn on d5, taking it clean off the board with a satisfying thunk. Caruana strikes back instantly. The black knight from f6 charges forward, recapturing on d5. The trade evens the score, but tension rises. White quietly slides a pawn to g3, preparing to unleash the bishop along the long diagonal. A sniper is being set up. Caruana plays calm and solid, pushing his e-pawn one square, giving his dark-squared bishop room to breathe. White's bishop glides to g2, taking aim straight at the black king's fortress, like a sniper locking onto its target. Black plays b6, a patient move, ready to bring out his own bishop to challenge White's control. White's queen suddenly jumps to a with check. A surprise shot, the first poke at Black's defenses. Black coolly blocks with his bishop, sliding it to d7 as if saying, "Calm down, it's not mate yet." One down. White calmly retreats the queen to b3, still staring menacingly at the pawn on b7, daring Black to slip. Black's bishop slides back to check, standing tall on the long diagonal and pointing toward White's queen. White develops another knight, this time from pawn to f3, bringing more muscle to the center. Black retreats his other knight to d7, setting up a strong defensive wall and waiting for the right moment to counterpunch. White pushes the d-pawn forward, blasting open the center. The battlefield is officially on fire. Black reacts sharply. The knight from d5 storms forward to c3, and bam! Captures White's knight. A brutal clash of horses. White's queen immediately swoops in from b3 to c3, taking back the black knight and keeping control of the center. Black calmly develops his bishop to d5, putting it on a powerful outpost and eyeing White's queen with a sneaky grin. White castles kingside, tucking his king into safety and connecting the rooks. The army is fully mobilized. Black develops his other bishop to d6, aiming its laser straight at White's king, hinting at future attacks. White maneuvers his knight from pawn to d2, preparing to jump into better squares or support the center. Black decides it's time for blood. His dark squared bishop lunges forward and captures the bishop on g2, removing White's sniper from the board. White's king is forced to step up and take back on g2, personally avenging the fallen bishop. Black castles kingside, securing his king and bringing the rook into the fight. Now both kings are safe. The real war begins. White places his rook on done, seizing control of the open file like planting a massive cannon on the front line. Black's knight jumps back to f6, ready to leap into the fray again, maybe toward e4 or g4. White's queen slides to f3, eyeing the king side and hinting at a possible attack. Black pushes his c-pawn to c5, exploding the center wide open. Transition to the middle game. The battle just got a whole lot sharper. White's knight hops into c4, landing on a juicy outpost and glaring at the bishop on 6. Black calmly retreats his bishop to a7, solidifying the defenses and saying, "Come at me when you're ready." No. White's light-squared bishop develops to a3, finally stepping into the battle, supporting the knight and eyeing the c5 pawn. Black's queen calmly slides to d5, staking her claim in the center like a queen who owns the board. White lines up heavy artillery. His rook swings to cone, doubling down on the c-file pressure. Black pushes his b-pawn one step, reinforcing c4 and daring White to take action. White's knight refuses to back off. Instead, it jumps to a5, landing with a heroic stomp right in the middle of the board. Black pushes his c-pawn forward to c4, locking things up and gaining space. White's knight leaps to chicks, a deadly infiltration. The knight looks Caruana straight in the eye. Check my fork potential. Nay, she are. Black's bishop retreats to d6, keeping everything covered, though clearly feeling the heat. White's bishop on f-hour captures the bishop on z6, a clean surgical strike that removes a key defender. Black recaptures with the rook from e8, the tower sliding across and taking back on 6. White's queen zips to d5, snapping up the pawn and smiling. She now controls the whole center. Black calmly pushes his e-pawn, planting it on d5 and shoving the queen away. White's bishop calmly slides back to f-hour, still putting pressure on the key dark squares. Black's rook swings to c8, taking full control of the open c-file and glaring at White's rook. White's rook on cone stares down its rival, a tense moment as both cannons are aimed right at each other. Black says, "Enough staring in trades." Rook takes rook on c6, clearing the file. White's queen recaptures on c6, keeping her central throne. Black brings his other rook to 8, ready to challenge the e-file and prepare tactics. White's rook slides to c2, doubling protection and threatening to invade. Black pushes the b-pawn again, advancing it to b4, gaining space on the queen side. White advances the f-pawn, adding more firepower and threatening to roll down the king side. Black lifts his rook to a6, activating it aggressively, ready to swing into action. White pushes the b-pawn to b3, trying to stop Black's pawn from rolling further. Black's c-pawn lunges forward another square, c3. A dangerous passer is born. White must be careful. White's king marches up to f2, stepping into the battlefield, preparing to help in the endgame. Black's knight jumps to d7, preparing to regroup and perhaps escort the passed pawn. White pushes the rook pawn to d3, doubling pressure on c3, like surrounding a dangerous beast. Black brings his rook to chicks, doubling down on defending the pawn. White plays e3, calmly locking down the center and getting ready for a big push. Black trades rooks. Rook takes rook on e3, clearing tension on the e-file. White's king steps up and takes the rook back, feeling safer with fewer heavy pieces on the board. Black activates his king, stepping forward to d6, bringing the monarch closer to the action. White brings his king further to d3, now standing proudly in the middle of the board. Black centralizes his king even more, walking to f7. The kings are ready to duel in the endgame. White's bishop calmly sits on cone, repositioning to keep an eye on the queenside pawns. Black mirrors with his king stepping to f6, fully centralized. Transition to the endgame. The heavy pieces are gone, but the fight is far from over. White pushes his pawn to f3, a slow but deadly idea, preparing to open lines on the queenside. Black responds with f5, meeting pawn with pawn, refusing to give White an inch. White snaps it off. Pawn from a3 captures on b4, clearing space and breaking open the queenside. Black takes back with his pawn, capturing on b4. Two connected pawns are now marching like soldiers. White's rook lands on a2, pinning its sights on the pawns, saying, "Not so fast." No. Black's knight leaps to bait, circling back to defend those pawns like a loyal guard dog. White advances his h-pawn, pushing it to h4, creating a second front. Now Black has to watch both sides. Black calmly centralizes his knight again, hopping it to bait's destination. 6, guarding everything. White's king steps to e3, staying active and ready to lead the charge. Black's king moves to e6, standing right across from White's king like two generals staring each other down. White's king boldly steps forward to d3, refusing to back off. Black's king mirrors with f7 to f6. Both kings now in perfect position, tension at its peak. White pushes his a-pawn further, a4, looking to target Black's pawn chain from the side. Black advances his pawn to a5, locking the file. The queenside is now a ticking time bomb. White trades. Pawn from a4 captures pawn on a5, opening the file once again. Black's pawn from b4 recaptures on f5, still holding the majority but looking weaker. White's rook slides to a2, glaring down at the pawn on a5, threatening invasion. Black's rook returns to b6, shifting to defend the queenside pawns. White advances his h-pawn again to f5, poking holes on the king side and threatening to march it all the way. Black's knight leaps to bait once more, dancing around to cover key squares. White's king marches to d3, drawing closer to the queenside pawns. The hunt is on. Black's rook slides to a6, trying to keep White out, but looking a bit passive now. White's king steps up to c2, fully supporting the coming invasion. Black brings his rook back to b6, guarding the critical pawns. White's bishop retreats to 7, putting pressure on b6 and eyeing promotion squares. Black's king shuffles to a7, staying near the center to hold things together. White's bishop lands on 6, dominating the board. This is a monster bishop cutting across everything. Black's king steps back to 7, clinging to defense. White's rook dives to a4, lining up with the a5 pawn and preparing to strike. Black's rook rushes to b5, desperately guarding the pawn chain from the side. White plays b7, threatening both sides of the board. Black's position is falling apart. Black's rook shifts back to b6, still hanging on by a thread. Caruana's rook slides from a4 to a5, snapping off the last black pawn like a final punch. Maxime leans back, shakes his head, and tips over his king. Resignation. The hall erupts. Caruana, the American gladiator, has triumphed. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.